方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。Homage to the great means, expansive Buddhas, Flower Garland Sutra, and the ocean-wide Flower Garland Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Wu Shang Shen Shen Wei Miao Fa Bai Qian Wan Jie Nan Zao Yu Wo Jin Jian Wan De Shou Chi Yuan Jie Ru Lai Zhen Shi Yi. The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄大家阿弥陀佛. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, is my mic loud enough? I'll just, okay, good. I might mention, and I don't actually have much hope that anybody's going to do anything about it, but there are lots and lots and lots of empty seats on all sides, and people in the back have nowhere to sit. If people would please sit forward, including the Shamis, who each have their own separate rows, and nobody will sit, you know, in a Shami's row, so we've lost all those seats. 请各位 Shami 们 Shami 你们，如果你们可以往前边坐，后边的人没有位置坐了啊，不要知道自己的舒服哈。It's nice to have your own row, and maybe on a regular Sunday night that would be okay, but tonight we have lots of friends here, and we want to honor them by giving them somewhere to sit. Kind of basic. So please don't just sit in your own row, all right? If it were Shifu, Shifu would blast you. Don't have any doubts about that. Shifu would say, 不要那么自私，只知道自己. So we're not Shifu, so we won't do that. But by now, you should have been told that a lot. All right. Much, much better. Thank you. Okay, welcome to our second part of our afternoon and evening on Buddhist Text Translation Society, the Venerable Master's legacy of lecturing on texts and circulating and distributing those texts. So this afternoon we had a large program, a long program. It's very varied and deep and profound, and I think a lot of people were surprised at how much has been done and the breadth and depth of our translation efforts, which should not hide the work that has not been done and the work that remains to be done, which is our challenge at moving forward. I had a chance to go online to btts.org/live to take a look at the webcast this afternoon, and was amazed to see the Chinese language player and the Vietnamese language player working. The whole thing, everything that happened this afternoon is online and available for you to review, and you can do it in multiple languages. So that's quite amazing. Tonight we have a sutra lecture portion, which is our ordinary Sunday evening lecture on the Avatamsaka Sutra. And then after that, I'm going to come down and join Professor Ron Epstein and Pasaka David Rounds in continuing to talk about the process of translation. So that's going to happen next. And first we need to look into the sutra. So if you have the text in front of you, if you have the Chinese language text, I'm going to ask you please to turn to page 182. 中文的本是182页。英文113. The English text is 113. Now there are very, very few copies of the English text, so please don't worry. If you don't have one, I will give you the text and allow you to that way to recite after me, and we'll just go over the a very small portion of our text so that we can continue with our discussion of translation per se. So it's a special day, special evening, and we'll just say do a small portion. 各位今天晚上如果你们手上有这个中文的本子的话呢，你们都要翻到182页182，英文113页The English text is down at the very bottom, the second paragraph from the bottom. If you don't have the English, no problem. I'll just give you the text. 那个英文113倒数第二段 Okay, thank you all for moving forward. Now I think we're doing better to make seats available for the folks who are just still coming in. 刚刚讲英文就说我们欢迎大家了参加我们这个 BTTS Buddhist Text Translation Society 特别的节目特别的法会第二段下午我们都讲了很多方面跟着玄公上人这个翻译经典这个大愿他的事业各方面都有报道很多人跟我讲说哇想不到这个上人的愿力现在发达的那么不同的语文呢不同的方式所以这是一方面还有呢我刚刚看了今天下午节目的webcast 上网的广播这个网上的广播 www.drba.org/live 那个节目全部已经到了网上而且呢有中文有粤文的翻译这是算是有所进步了好了我准备讲几句十回商品华严经十回商品然后呢本人就下来了就讲几句自己的感想对于翻译这个工作然后呢我准备介绍易湘谦教授就是果荣易果荣我们接近玄公上人第一位西方人皈依他第一位然后呢跟着就让要讲他想讲的话呢我们就介绍 David Rounds 果州居士他也继续讲从他的立场从他的看法翻译上人的诗词寄送是应该怎么进行Okay? All right. Now I'm on page 182 of the Chinese and it's the first sentence in the Chinese. Let me give it to you and I'm going to put my palms together and invite you all to do the same if you would like to do that and we'll read the Chinese and then read the English and then explain a little bit. So I'll wait till everybody gets a seat and we'll begin. 请各位安坐然后我们就开始Okay. 愿一切众生得陀罗尼清净藏身以妙辩才显示诸法 All right. English, he vows that all beings will obtain bodies of the pure treasury of Dharani and use wondrous eloquence to expound all dharmas. All right. Just one sentence for now. Where are we? We're in the chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra known as the 10 Transferences. And in this chapter, which is the Flower Garland Sutra, there's a bodhisattva whose name is Vajra Storehouse. And this bodhisattva is Vajra Banner Bodhisattva, Jinggang Chuang Pusa, Vajra Banner Bodhisattva, who is describing one practice The practice that he is describing is called transference, and it's a way of giving Dharma with the mind. So what is that? It's giving. It's just giving like we give food, we give kind words, we give courage. It's giving, and it's giving Dharma as the gift, and then it's giving with the mind. That's all that is going on in this chapter. But it's done in such amazing detail, and it's done with such clarity that when we observe how the Bodhisattva in the sutra is giving Dharma with his or her mind, we can immediately put it into practice ourselves. How many times a day at the City of 10,000 Buddhas or in your home, if you are practicing according to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, which the Avatamsaka Sutra takes as the expert, how many times do you transfer merit? Maybe never. Maybe every single time you do anything from meditating to bowing to reciting to memorizing to practicing precepts to eating vegetarian food. All of that is creating merit, goodness, what are called shangan, roots of goodness, which you can give away. You can share them with your mind by saying, I dedicate all of the goodness that comes from cultivating in this way to, and then you fill in the blank, to whoever you would like, whoever you want to give that merit and virtue to, with the wish that, fill in the blank. Those wishes, those vows of transference are what make up the chapter called 10 Transferences. The entire chapter, and it's a long one, the entire chapter is chock full of bodhisattvas' wishes and vows, how they give away that goodness. And as I understand it, this chapter is just like a handbook. It's a how-to manual of the Bodhisattva's practice of one Dharma door, one method of practice, which is called transference. It is Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's 10th practice, Pujie Hui Xiang, which is to give all the goodness away. And that's what it's all about. So this sutra has the chapter dedicated to one practice entirely, which is about how you take all the good stuff that you've earned through cultivation and use your mind like a radio station with that big tall tower sending out a broadcast in all directions at once. How do you do it? What's the program on your radio beacon as it goes out to the world, to all living beings? That's the practice of transference. And of course, the better you can concentrate, the more pure your radio signal, the more people can receive your broadcast. Those vows are fascinating. So that's what this is about. Here we are. We're in what's called the 6th transference. And the 6th transference further divides into 5 subparts. We're in the 5th subpart. There are more. And the Bodhisattva here has been doing this formula all through the 6th transference. First, he or she cultivates. In this case, it's the practice of giving. And the giving the Bodhisattva does is kind of amazing. And you have to put a little condition on it, which is the Bodhisattva's giving away parts of his or her body. Yep. In this case, the Bodhisattva was giving away internal organs. Ooh. Giving away livers, giving away hearts, giving away kidneys, giving away lungs, giving away gallbladders, brains, tongues, eyes. So this is the internal organs of the body. Xin Gang Pi Fei Shen, the 5 classical organs, the 6 hollow organs and the full organs. The Bodhisattva has been giving them away. Now the condition is what? Kids, don't try this at home. All right? Don't hear, oh, the Dharma Master was talking about the Bodhisattva giving away his body organs. Me too, I want to do it too. I'll just cut out my liver and give it away because that's what the sutra says, right? Wrong. Not a good idea unless, now, there's a condition on the condition. If you are an organ donor, now that's different. That's different. You can check your driver's license. If your driver's license has one of those little green dots on it, or a little blue dot on it, or a little red dot on it in the state of California, that says when you went to DMV and got your driver's license, you agreed. You put a check in the box that said, if the occasion arises, that is to say, sudden death overtakes you in some situation, and your pupils of your eyes or your liver or your heart is perfectly healthy and fine and beating and usable, you agree to let that go to someone else who needs it. Ah, that's called being an organ donor. Is that different than the bodhisattva here who's giving away his internal organs? In principle, no. It's the same. It's the same. You're willing to let part of your body go to someone else when needed. So, what's different then? Here the bodhisattva is, he has, the setup was the bodhisattva received a request from somebody who said, I need your heart. And the bodhisattva said, delighted. Here it is. Because he or she used the wisdom to look at the situation and said, it would be appropriate at this time for me to give my heart to this person. And he didn't wait until he died in an accident and had it surgically removed and transplanted. He went ahead and did it, we assume, by choice, voluntarily. So it's different there, and the bodhisattva, with his or her wisdom, looks at the conditions. What's the situation? And says, yeah, this is good. I would like to give part of my body to sustain that person's life. Here you are. Different. And in control, voluntarily. So, if we don't have the wisdom of the bodhisattva before we voluntarily rip our heart out of our chest as a gift to somebody, then we should think about it a couple times. And that's why I say, kids, don't try this at home. Make sure you understand the situation fully before you decide to give it away. So, that's what the bodhisattva has been giving away, and we have to give that little disclaimer, otherwise somebody would say, boy, those Buddhists are bloodthirsty. Here we thought they were in the peace and compassion, right? And they're ripping their internal organs out and giving them away. Well, understand the situation. This is Bodhisattva Mahasattva who knows what's going on. So that's the difference. So once the Bodhisattva gives away in this way, then he or she takes all that merit that comes from giving and says, may all beings, those who receive the gift of my internal organs and those who do not, may they all obtain bodies of the pure treasury of Dharani. Wondrous speech. A zong chi gathers in all dharmas and collects and upholds, maintains wondrous meanings. May all those beings who receive my dedication, the goodness that I would have gotten from my gift of my internal organs, may they all obtain in the future bodies like that. And with that wondrous treasury of Dharani, may they themselves use wondrous eloquence to expound the Dharma. May those living beings in the future find their way to the city of 10,000 Buddhas and make common cause with wholesome Dharma friends to translate the teachings of good and wise advisors with eloquence. So, what a wonderful testimony in tonight's sutra to today's activity, talking about BTTS. Sometimes the sutra just does that. It just, out of space, just clicks perfectly with what's going on. The sutra explains real life, and real life illustrates the sutra. So here we have a good and wise teacher, Master Hsuan Hua, our founder, who did just this. With eloquence, he expounded the Dharma for 30 years of his life. And here are living beings who are following along with our teacher, hoping to expound the Dharma that our teacher bequeathed to us with bringing to life and making available the eloquence with which he spoke. So that's just one sentence out of the sutra, and my time is up. I have to translate what I've just said. But I just want to say that tonight I was delighted to see how the passage from the sutra exactly matched the activity that we're doing today and illuminates it. Gives us plenty to think about. So, in the future, may we too use the Abhitamsaka Sutra as a handbook of practice to guide our steps into the practice of transference. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's 10th magical vow. 就说现在第6回向，这个是10回向品，《华严经》10回向品。10回向品呢，就是讲一个法门，这个法门就叫回向，回向功德。普结回向，这是普贤菩萨所讲的第10大愿啊，普贤菩萨10大愿第10个啊，讲一个法门，告诉我们怎么样行这个法门。10回向品我们已经讲到第6回向颠母啊，那个10回向品呢，就说菩萨他先修行，用什么法门他就先修行，然后呢，他就把所修来的善根这些好处呢，就用他的心做法布施。回向呢是第2种布施，先修行。这里呢，第6回向菩萨用这个布施他的内脏，这个难行能行，难舍能舍这个横门就把他心肝脾肺肾需要的话，心肝脾肺肾他就布施布施出去了，需要的话他就给你然后呢，他就行第2种布施。第2种布施就是用心把那个修来的功德又回向一次那么他又布施一次。这个回向呢是什么呢？就是用心发一个愿，就说我愿意把这个一切的善根布施给什么人很多次就是一切众生。不过呢，我们跟着华严经上的菩萨效法他这个大心，我们修这个回向的时候，回向给谁完全看你的愿然后呢，他就说愿意回向给谁，然后呢，希望受到我回向的众生如何如何，也是跟着他的智慧，他的慈悲，也是跟着我们的智慧和慈悲。所以呢，没错，这个10回向品是一个手册，告诉我们跟着华严经上的菩萨回向的时候应该怎么做。他怎么做呢？他就说他就先把他的内脏就布施。我刚刚讲了，用英文就讲说，这是华严经上的菩萨他可以做。你如果是 organ donor 的话，那不同的，那是因为就说无常来了我们的就脱胎回向的话就说脱胎了就往生的话，那么那个时候我们打印说可以用我的心脏、我的肝脏我的眼睛珠可以来救人呢，我愿意了。那是 organ donation， 那个是死之后。那么菩萨呢，他还没有往生了，他就说有人来说可不可以把你的这个心脏布施给我？那菩萨用他的智慧看看那个因缘，就说可以可以观察那个因缘，可以了，我愿意跟你结这个善缘他有把握，还没有死就愿意做那个 organ donor， 所以不同就在哪里。可是呢，他这样布施之后呢，他发的回向愿呢，那就特别了。他说愿意受我的回向的众生，愿意他们得陀罗尼清净藏身，就说来生的时候，他们得到一个藏身。什么藏身？一个清净的藏身。 什么清净藏身呢？就是陀罗尼清净藏身。这什么呢？就说陀罗尼就是总持的意思，总一切法持无量义是这个意思。就是为什么要这样子呢？以妙辩才显示诸法。哇，那么今天这个愿呢，就跟我们今天所做的这个 BTTS presentation 恰到好处了。华严经就图解我们今天所做的。我们今天所做的就是显示华严经里边的道理了，以妙辩才显示诸法。那么我们就说上人苦口婆心的把正法，把一切诸法解释在西方讲解讲经说法。那么他就给我们跟着上人后边的人一个机会来进入这个陀罗尼藏身，就用各种的方法来就说流通上人所留下来的这个辩才，讲经说法。所以有的时候这个华严经呢，跟我们reality 这个实际就非常配合那么这是其中一个例子。Okay, so I did a rough translation for myself of the ideas here. I wanted to say one thing, and before I come down, I have a story. The text said, 演说诸法，显示诸法。And the story is a personal story. I was in this hall at one point in my formation as a monk, a young monk, and I had gone through all kinds of difficulties and challenges to my own understanding of what I was doing. I think people all pretty much at some point go through challenges to their vision, and I had been having a tough time in understanding what I was supposed to do, and 3 steps 1 bow was over, and I hadn't gotten enlightened, and I thought, oh my goodness, did I fail? And I was wondering about that. What was I going to do? What was I indeed supposed to be doing as a monk? And I remember we were circumambulating, walking around the way we do, reciting Amitabha Buddha's name, and wandering around, and I had all these questions and doubts in my mind. What am I supposed to do now? And I remember just at the back, coming around, there was Shifu, and Shifu often would do this. When we recited, he would stand there as we walked by, and he would just watch as we all walked by one by one. And it was a wonderful feeling because you felt somehow that Shifu was watching and taking note and checking you up, checking you out. Everybody walked by. And I was really had the blues. I was really feeling bummed and kind of confused about what I was going to be doing. And Shifu at this point he just tapped me and gestured, "Follow me." So I stepped out of line and we walked back just to the back there underneath the Buddhas. And Shifu said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Shifu, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here." And he said, just cultivate every single day. He said, be really sincere. And he said, don't worry. Cultivation is not for today. It's not for tomorrow. Cultivation is not for this life. Cultivation is not for next life. He said, cultivation is forever. He said, and then one day, and as Shifu said this, he got this look in his eye. He looked like a child, just like a 12-year-old boy experiencing just the beauty of the sunshine and the blue sky and the white cloud. He said, someday you'll be able to speak the Dharma for all living beings, he said. And that was his phrase. And as I looked at him, I suddenly realized that Shifu actually loved doing that. And it's risky to say your teacher loves anything, but I could see as he said that with his whole heart, Shifu loved to speak the Dharma for living beings. And it was enough. It was enough. It just lit, his face lit up, and the whole room lit up, just as Shifu said, someday, he said, you'll be able to speak the Dharma for all living beings. And something in me went click, and I thought, yeah. Why do I look past that as something, looking for something else beyond? That's it. Just the force of Shifu's childlike face, saying, someday you'll be able to speak the Dharma for all living beings, someday in the future, some future life. Don't cultivate just for today. And it was like a door opened. It was like, okay, that's it. And I'll never forget that, because it happened right here in this hall. And clearly, Shifu did that. That's what our teacher did. It wasn't, I mean, among all the other million things that our teacher did. But he did that every day. Every day. And I thought, wow, how wonderful. So I just wanted to share that, because that's what the sutra said tonight. And this is the day that we've been talking about our teacher's legacy. So among all the many things that people have said about our teacher, certainly that is one. That he loved, he just enjoyed, and did every day speak the Dharma for all living beings. What else are we here to do? 就是说今天晚上那句经文就显示今天所做的哈。那么记得有一天在万佛殿这里，我个人呢就拜完了这个三皈拜什么的，这个朝山就回来这里呢，就也没开悟，哎呀，就应该怎么做呢？哎呀，是不是失败这个目的啊？是不就我好像迷失方向？就做出家人呢，就应该怎么做？那么这样子就胡思乱想哈。那么很多这个妄想哈。那么上人那天我们在绕佛念南无阿弥陀佛，就绕着。我记得那天上人他就出来了，站在旁边，每一个弟子就经过上人那边，一边念就一边绕。上人他那个时候就好像 check us out， 有这个感觉啊。到底他做什么我也不知道了。不过上人他就会好像观察每一个人在那儿过来了，哇，很特别的。那天我真的是好像烦恼深重，哎呀，心里很多妄想。那么上人他就 tap 就过来，我离开那个队伍就到后边了。上人怎么样啊？我说师父出了家啊，那么多年就没开悟啊，不知道啊，应该怎么做呢？他说不要，他说修行不要看今天，修行不是为了明天，修行不是为了今生，修行并不是为了来生，修行是永远的。不要只知道自己的明天，修行是永远的修行。他说等一等，你不知道哪一个生命，你真的明白忽然贯通，那个时候你都会为一切众生演说诸法。他说，然后他就简单说那句，我看上人的脸就亮起来了，好像整个万佛殿就亮起来，他就这种好像天真无邪，当然上人一向都是天真无邪，不过那特别好像一个I better say it in English 我的中文词不大意，就像一个 young boy， 就 innocent and pure and just 就好像哇，一切都好像世界是很新的清净的，哇，你就为一切众生演说诸法， 我一下子就说，对呀，有什么比这个更好啊？哇，就好像一个门开了。哦，所以呢，我就说，哦，那为什么有律啊？那么多妄想呢？商人从第一天到了美国，就是为一切众生演说诸法，好像这是他很愿意、很欢喜、很快乐做的事，何必有律呢？有什么比这个更妙呢？所以我就OK，明白，所以呢，我那天呢一辈子难忘了哈。那么今天看那句《华严经》的经文得陀罗尼清净陀罗尼藏身呢，就为一切众生显示，就得妙辩才身呢，这个为一切众生显示诸法。我说，哎，师父是这样做的，我们跟着他后边的人，就是尽量的把他的这个抱负就不辜负就让这个国家全世界的众生知道有这么一个善知识就这样做。Okay, that's what I want to say. I'm going to come down and introduce our other speakers and move on in our program here.
Hello, if you need a Chinese， 如果你需要中文的翻译，同步的翻译请举手，我们有一些义工会来给大家。So if you need Chinese translation， 如果需要中文的翻译。
So we're getting set up. It'll take just a minute, and I'm about to introduce to you all Professor Ron Epstein, and he will get settled in here, and then I'll give you the full introduction. And this is our cameras are recording this, and our microphones are recording it for the website. All right. This is indeed part 2 of our BTTS presentation. We've had a program this afternoon. This is the second section. And I've been lecturing on the Avatamsaka Sutra as my portion. And I'm going to introduce 2 more speakers. And to my right, here is a face familiar to those of you who've been following DRBA and the BTTS from its beginning. This is Professor Ron Epstein, Yi Xiangqian, Guolong Jishi. And he, as I mentioned earlier, the first Western disciple to take refuge with the Venerable Master, and then was instrumental in introducing our teacher to the other fellow cultivators who came down largely from Seattle, University of Washington, to the 1968 Shurangama Sutra lecture session, 90 days at Buddhist Lecture Hall in San Francisco. So a lot of that his history is known to many of you, and I won't take up more of Ron's time. But his website, I hope he tells us about his website, which has been a source of discovery of the Dharma for many, many people, as well as vegetarian Dharma and issues regarding genetically engineered organisms and the products that we use. There's a wealth of Dharma, applied Dharma, on Ron's website as well. So, enough of my introduction. Please let us welcome Professor Ron Epstein.
Good evening. I want to thank Reverend Heng Sure for inviting me to speak with you tonight, although I had some misgivings. He said that it would be best to speak about the early days of the Buddhist Text Translation Society and what went on with Shifu when it got started. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't remember. All I remember is that in sometime, I think, in early 1970, we had some meetings. He got everybody together. And in one of those meetings, I have a vague recollection of a very short meeting of an hour and a half or 2 hours, and Shifu just laid out the Buddhist Text Translation Society and assigned people jobs to do and said, okay, go to work. And we had another meeting very similar about Vajrabodhi, and he gave everybody jobs and explained, what the various parts of it were going to be, and people went to work, and that was that. Yeah. Fortunately, Dharma Master Heng Sure gave you some of the flavor of what was going on then, although I think there were a lot of positive things going on also that she didn't mention. So I wanted to touch first of all on a theme that Reverend Heng Sure brought up this afternoon, and that is that the Master founded the Buddhist Text Translation Society with the eventual goal of translating the Buddhist canon into English and all the other languages of the West. And he saw clearly that reliable translations with readable and understandable commentaries were essential to the understanding and practice of the Buddha Dharma by Westerners. Now, why is that? Because it's not just enough to meditate or recite the Buddha's name. I think most of you know that back then and now, most Westerners are attracted to Buddhism because they want to learn Buddhist meditation and get high or feel calm or whatever. And we all know that there's a lot more to Buddhism than that. It's not enough to meditate. It's not even enough to meditate and hold the precepts. But you need to understand what you're experiencing in your meditation and what you're experiencing in your daily life on the path. And the sutras teach us how to correctly analyze our experience, how to understand what thoughts, what speech, what actions are on the path and which ones are not, and why. And that's why it's important to have this information available in English for people who want to practice the Buddha Dharma who speak English. Now, I'd like to quote the Venerable Master about what Reverend Heng Sure was talking about this afternoon, just a very brief passage. He said, "When I left the home life, I wanted to find out why such a perfect teaching as Buddhism was studied by so few people in the world. Why were Protestant Christianity and Catholicism so widespread? After looking into it, I discovered that the reason Buddhism has not spread throughout the world is because we Buddhists have not translated the Buddhist scriptures into the languages of each and every nation. Catholics and Protestant Christians, on the other hand, have had the Bible translated into the languages of all countries. The people of every country can read it, immediately understand it, If we can do this with the Buddhist scriptures, translating them into as many languages as we are able, Buddhism will become a universal teaching even without our wishing it. So I have made a vow when I left home that even though I don't know any languages other than Chinese, as long as I am alive, I will see to it that the Buddhist scriptures are translated into the languages of all countries. That's my vow. I'm willing to exhaust my abilities to promote this work. So as Shifu's disciples, it's our job to help him carry out this work and to fulfill this vow. Some of you may not be aware that at the time of the founding of BTTS, and to a certain extent today, the people who were most prepared to do this work, namely Buddhist scholars in academia who had all this incredible language training, etc., were very reluctant to translate sutras into Western languages. And that's even true today, and it's even more true in terms of translating traditional commentaries along with the sutras. Now, why is that? It's simply a matter of academic fashion. Most scholars don't do this work. Now, you heard this afternoon the incredible work that people in the Buddhist Text Translation Society have done since its founding in 1970, and about the hundreds of volumes that have been translated and are being translated, and so on and so forth. And we also heard about Vajrabodhisi. So if all this great work is going on, why are we spending all day talking about this? It is true that in BTTS we have a lot of really incredibly talented people who are very sincere and working very hard. And they've accomplished an incredible amount. But the fact of the matter is, there's a whole lot more that we need to do. We don't have enough people, and we're not necessarily using the people we have as efficiently as we might. So keep that in mind in terms of if you're not already participating in BTTS, about what you might do to join in the work. And I'll talk more about that later. I would like to say, because I don't know how much time I'll have this evening, that it's very clear to me that the most meaningful things that I have done in this life are the work translating that I've done for BTTS, without a doubt. And I think I derive the most satisfaction of anything that I've done in my life, from this work that I've participated in with others in BTTS. How did I get in? I thought maybe I'd share with you a little bit of my initial experiences with Shifu and how I got involved with translating, because that was not my intention when I first met Shifu. When I first met Shifu, I wanted to meditate with him and get enlightened, even though I had no idea what that meant. And I didn't understand him very well when I first met him, because I was just beginning to study Chinese, and it never occurred to me, to study Chinese so that I could translate the sutras. And indeed, during the Shurangama Sutra summer session, there were 3 other people there who came down with me from the University of Washington in Seattle, who had been studying Chinese for a much longer time than I had, and and their Chinese was much better than mine. And as many of you may know, the Chinese of the Shurangama Sutra is really, really difficult compared to stuff like Mencius that I was learning to translate and read at the University of Washington. So I just naturally, assumed that the three of them were going to do all the translating during the summer session until they went on strike. Some of you have heard this story. And so I became a strike breaker, and Shifu called me in one day and said, "Gorong, I want you to break this strike and start translating." And I said, "Shifu, I'd love to, but I really don't understand the sutra. I don't think I can do it." And he very kindly, and this is so typical of Shifu, he saw that I was afraid, that I was sincere, I wanted to do it, but I was afraid I couldn't do it, And there are so many aspects of my practice with Shifu were that way, I really wanted to do it, but I was afraid that I couldn't do it, And so Shifu then, practiced the paramita of the giving of no fear, of helping me to overcome my fear. And so he said, "Don't worry, I'll help you. It'll be okay." So I did my best, which was not very good, but it was enough to break the strike, and the other translators came back, and I joined the translation rotation, and very slowly learned to translate better and better every time I did it, and gained confidence in translating. And over those early years, one by one, other people would join in to translate. And Shifu was also incredibly compassionate and encouraging to them, not only Shifu, but the whole assembly would be. It was just like we were a Dharma family, and we were rooting for the new translator. And the way we did it was we would have a so-called senior translator, not that any of us were that great translators, sitting there helping the new person translate until they got their wings and were able to leave the nest and be on their own, so to speak. So the next thing that I'd like to share with you is after the Shurangama Sutra summer session, I was going to go back to the University of Washington and finish up my master's degree. And so that fall, before I went back to Seattle, Shifu called me aside and he said, "I know you're going back to finish up your master's degree, but what are you planning on doing after that?" And I said, "Well, I thought maybe I'd just head for the woods." Now, you have to understand that what it was like in 1968. We began the Shurangama Sutra session. Not very long into it, Robert Kennedy got assassinated. The whole world was in turmoil. The Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia. The students were rioting in Paris. The Chicago police were beating up demonstrators during the Democratic Convention. In San Francisco, we were at Ten Ho Miao, the Buddhist lecture hall on Waverly Place in San Francisco, on this tiny little place on the 4th floor, and people were sleeping on the floors and on the roof. And every night, every single night during the whole summer, there were just sirens of police cars and fire engines all night long, and people were rioting and burning down buildings in in the Fillmore district and shooting at firemen who wanted to put out the fires. This was the crazy world that was going on outside of the Buddhist lecture halls. So I thought, I want to get out of here. I want to go someplace quiet. Maybe get a job teaching high school out in the boonies and the woods where I can just have some peace and quiet and sit and meditate. And so Shifu said to me, well, if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But another thing that you could do, and you don't have to do it, it's entirely up to you, is you could go to Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and get a PhD and help me translate the sutras. And I said, okay, Shifu, I can do that. But I'm not sure I'll get in. He said, don't worry about that, I'll take care of that. So that's pretty much what set me on the path of translating sutras and being an active member of the Buddhist Text Translation Society all of these years. We don't have a lot of time, and I want to leave some time for David, but I just wanted to tell you one other story that made a big impression on me, and that was I had a colleague at San Francisco State where I was teaching, Professor Jacob Needleman, and he called me up one day and said that he had been contacted by a very famous Buddhist studies professor, an elder professor, whose name was Professor David Ruegg, who he was an American, and he was, I think, one of the most admired Buddhist scholars by Buddhist scholars, and he was very, very respectful of the Sangha and of the Buddha Dharma, and he was a very humble and brilliant man. And so Professor Needleman said, Professor Ruegg heard about you people over there on 15th Street. We were then at Gold Mountain Monastery on 15th Street, and he'd like to meet the Venerable Master Hsuan Hua, your teacher. Would you please take him over there? So I called up and I told Shifu that I was going to bring this professor over, and we went up on the second floor, and Shifu was just kind of sitting there, and I translated, and Professor Ruegg, very sincerely, we hadn't put out that much stuff, but he'd seen some of our early translations, and he praised Shifu and said that he'd looked at the translations of his commentaries that we'd put out, and that he was very impressed. And Shifu said, oh, no, it's really not very good, and these young disciples of mine, their translations really aren't that good. And then he said, you have to understand that what I'm doing when I'm lecturing on these sutras, making a commentary on these sutras. And he said, in the West, people don't understand the Buddha Dharma very well. These young disciples of mine, they don't understand the Buddha Dharma very well. And so all I am trying to do is explain the Dharma in the very clearest, simplest terms so they can get the general idea of what it's all about in a very simple, superficial way, enough so that they can do a rough translation and start on the path to Buddhahood. So that really stuck with me, that Shifu was just trying to, in a very simple way, explain the basics to us so that we could just enough so that we could translate the basic ideas of the sutra and understand them so that we could apply them in our cultivation. And he also very often said, when we read the sutras, we should not feel that they are very, very profound, and they're so profound that we cannot understand them. He said, when you read the sutras, read them as if you are the ones who are speaking the sutras, not the Buddha. Make them your own, so you are speaking them, and in that way it will be very, very easy for you to understand them. I'm running out of time here, so I just want to finally make a plea that we don't just need translators. If other people have said we need web designers, we need graphic artists, we need layout people, we need lawyers, we need advertising people, we need people with business background to help with distribution, we need online sales people, we need people to promote BTTS books on general Buddhist websites, etc., etc., etc. And I promise you, if you do this work, you'll find it very, very fulfilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Enlightening talk. Great stories. Next, we're going to ask Pastor David Rounds, Guozhou, to share with us some of his thoughts on the process of translation. And those of you who have been around will recognize David from all his different jobs within BTTS. And he has written some of the Amitabha Sutra translations for evening ceremonies that we listened to, and then said, nope, send that one back. And he came up with another one. This is in the days of Gold Mountain. We went through 3 different translations for chanting of the Amitabha Sutra directly from David. It's David's pen. Many of the praises in English that are in the liturgy that came from David. And probably the one that we'll remember after the next century passes, looking back, will be his heading of the committee that translated the 2nd edition of the Shurangama Sutra. So that, now, mind you, David was not alone in that work. He and Ron both had a large part of that, and the Sangha members here. But he's, I think, in terms of the English version of that, David's style and care is very much imprinted on that text that took 7 years to complete, that 2nd edition. So, without taking more of the time, let me introduce David Rounds, Guozhou, Upasaka Rounds.
Well, I had more prepared than I have time to say, and that's always a good thing, to have too much rather than too little. I'm not sure what's on the screen. What's that?
Can you see?
Yes, it would be nice to have that light, thanks.
Somebody turn on this light here.
What I want to bring up is something that I don't think has been discussed today, although I was not able to be in the hall most of the day. And that is the question of verses and translating verses. When I say verses, I mean several things. In the sutras, there are 2 kinds of verses: the gathas and the geyas. And the gathas are hymns of praise or instruction, and the geyas are reiterative verses. Namely, the sutras so often say again what they've already said, but now in verse. And why do the sutras do that? Why do the compilers of the sutras, why did the Buddha do that? Because verse and prose are different mediums. They're like a play and a movie. You can have a movie and a play be the same, say, Shakespeare play. But the fact that it's in a movie makes it a totally different kind of thing. And in the same way, a verse is different than prose. And I've been working on an assignment that our Master Hsuan Hua gave me, which is to translate or retranslate the verses that Shifu wrote for each one of the lines of the Shurangama mantra. And this has made me confront the question in a way that I never quite had to do before. Although working on the 250-line verse by Manjushri Bodhisattva in the Shurangama Sutra sort of started me off on this. I'm I'm not sure what people are seeing on the screen there. I see people looking, so... okay, thank you, Marian. So what I thought I'd grab these last few minutes of this day to do is to just quickly introduce the problem. The problem is, how do we translate verses? And one of the other thing that's so important is that our teacher was a poet. He was actually a very good poet, and he wrote a lot of poetry, and it would be wonderful to have it all translated as into English poetry. So my premise is, in fact, there's a famous saying, I don't know who said it, if you translate poetry, you translate everything but the poetry. If you re-say it in another language, you lose all the poetry part. You just get the words. So my feeling is that we have to learn how to bring the poetry across into the new language. It so happens that there is an English form of verse, which is rather similar to Shifu's 7-character verses, and this is what I want to show you right now. The characteristics of Chinese 7-character verse. 4 lines for verse paragraph. Am I saying what's on the screen? Good. 7 characters per line, each line a complete thought, a pause after the first 4 characters. The first 4 characters are often 2 pairs, so the meaning pattern is 2 plus 2 plus 3. All of the verses that Shifu wrote for the Shurangma mantra lines are built this way. So here's one that I gave you as put up as an example, and underlined it to show the way this is built. I think for a lot of people this is something you've known for a long time, but I want to nevertheless point it out. So without being too embarrassed about my poor Chinese, I'll just read this quickly. Ying shou, ren tian, zhen gong yang, zhong fu, zhi hui, gan sui tong, yin yuan, fo man, cheng wan heng, shi zi ming wei, da jiao wang. Okay. So here's my attempt at an English translation. Well, no, let me point out. You can see in the verse that I just read badly, and somebody help me out there. All of those characteristics that are listed above are present there. There is the 4-line, 7-character verse, of course, and each line is a complete thought. The thought ends at the verse. That's not true of English verse. The line pause after the first 4 characters. Always, Shifu's 7-line poetry has that pause after the first 4. And also the first 4 are divided up often into pairs. So for example, on the 3rd line of the poem, we have yin yuan guo man. Okay, so there's yin and yang. That kind of thing, when Shifu can do it, he does it. He doesn't always do it. So all of those characteristics are in that verse. And an English translation might be something like, worthy of what's sincerely offered by the gods and people. Blessings sown and wisdom nurtured, breakthroughs always follow. The work is done, results achieved, all practices perfected, deserving to be called the King of Great Awakening. Now what about those 4 lines of English verse there? You will see, first of all, that they have that same pause in the middle. That's very important. And I tried to make the first 4 characters translate into pairs. For example, the 2nd line of the English, blessings sown and wisdom nurtured, and that's obviously a pair, right? The work is done, results achieved. They're also that pair there. So you get that sort of rhythm of 2 plus 2 plus 3. And if you pile it up and start reading a whole bunch of verses that are like that, you get this sort of rhythm. You can almost do a sort of solemn Confucian dance to it. Okay, so if you do the next screen, here's how these verses are built. I'm talking now especially about Shifu's group of verses for the Shrang Mantra. In terms of meaning, the first 4 characters of each line give specifics, while the last 3 characters of the line make a more general statement. In the Venerable Master's verse, the first 4 characters very often give causes, while the last 3 characters state results. So the law of karma is something that's inbuilt in the very substance of Shifu's verses. And similarly, the 4th line, or sometimes the 3rd and 4th line, may come to some conclusion, perhaps awakening, perhaps unwelcome karmic payback, based on the causes described in the first 3 lines. So again, the same verse, this is on the 3rd line of the Shrang Mantra, Ulahadi. Worthy of what's sincerely offered by the gods and people, blessings sown and wisdom nurtured, breakthroughs always follow. So you see that the first 4 characters, or what translate the first 4 characters, is commented on by the last 3. Blessings sown and wisdom nurtured, okay, that's the specific thing. If you do that, then the result, breakthroughs always follow. The work is done, results achieved, then the result, all practice is perfected. And then finally, summing up the whole thing, the last line, deserving to be called the King of Great Awakening. Okay, so I'm moving quickly because our time is limited, but if you'll show the next screen. Now let's look at English verse and see how we can punch it and kick it around and make it fit, translating the Chinese. Parallel characteristics of the English 7-beat verse line. 1, 4 lines for verse paragraph, same as Chinese. It's called the quatrain. Most English poetry is in quatrains, 4 lines. So it's totally natural to have 4 lines, both in Chinese verse and in English verse. 7 emphasized syllables per line interspersed evenly with 7 unemphasized syllables for a total of 7 beats per line, same as the Chinese. So it so happens that there is a kind of English verse called iambic heptameter, but you don't need to know that, which is 7 beats. It's 14 syllables, but 7 of those syllables are emphasized and 7 are not. So you still get that sense of the 2 plus 3, 2 plus 3, 2 plus 2 plus 3, 2 plus 2 plus 3. You can get that in English just as well as you can get it in Chinese. Also, because the line is long, a pause in each line, same as Chinese, but the pause may come earlier or later than after this 4th beat. So here the Chinese is more strict. Chinese verse is more strict than English verse. English verse has more legitimate variations. And so here's another one. This is line 4. And let's see. Xu Kong Fa Jie Guang Ming Zhang Shi Fang San Shi Da Zhi Zun Wo Jin Gui Ming Zhen Shi Xing Zheng Bian Zhi Jiao Miao Fa Tang. Wonderful metaphor at the end. You don't expect that character Tang there. Okay, so here's what you can do with it in English. The Dharma realm, the realm of space, a storehouse of great light, everywhere and for all time, the great, the honored wisdom. And to this true and genuine nature I'll devote my life, to right and universal wisdom's wondrous Dharma hall. Hopefully the way I read it, because I didn't read it all that emphatically, you can hear that 7 beats. And I've marked them here with the numbers, and I've put in bold the relevant syllables. Now in English verse, the number of words is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is the number of syllables. And the syllables have to be distributed so one's weak and one's strong. That's the trick of it. That's the only really hard part, to do that. So you can hear it, the Dharma realm, the realm of space. It isn't the Dharma realm, the realm of space, no. Okay, so that's if you have that distribution of 14 syllables when every other one is emphasized. And then you've really gotten quite close to the Chinese original. And if I think in a book like, Shifu's verses on the Shrangma mantra, you could build it up, the effect in English, just like Shifu does in Chinese, or almost. I think maybe we might have time for one more, do we? So, page number 4. All the other characteristics of this English verse form, iambic heptameter, can accommodate this Chinese verse form. For example, the 2 + 2 + 3 pattern, and ending each line with a complete thought. Added considerations for the English form. The Chinese counts characters, the English line counts syllables, not words. Oh, I've already said this. This is repetitive here. Okay, so if you look at this one, let's just look at the English here. The great courageous ones, their minds intent upon the path. Can you hear the 7? Pure amidst sense objects, lotuses grown clear of mud. Throughout the day and night they keep close watch upon their minds. Then gold will smelt to purity right within the fire. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful verse. And see if you can hear that rhythm, because it takes a little practice actually to read it out loud as well as to make it happen in writing. The great courageous ones, their minds intent upon the path. So there the break is after the 3rd beat. The great courageous ones. And then there's why did I do that in translating? Because it was the only way I could figure out how to do it. But luckily English gives us this legitimate kinds of variations, which I'm not going to talk about tonight. Pure amidst sense objects, that's the chun there. Lotus has grown clear of mud. Now against the second line of the Chinese, I've switched the English. What was in front I put in back, what was in back I put in front. And those kinds of liberties you have to be able to take, you'll never be able to do it. Throughout the day and night, they keep close watch upon their minds. Then gold will smelt to purity right within the fire. What time is it, Ron? 8:56. Okay, so I'm going to do one more, and then if anybody has a question, I will do my best. Or maybe we've done enough. I think probably we've done enough. I'd like to pursue this because I really believe that it will really make our those parts of our sutra translations which are verse really come alive and make the same kind of effect that they have in the original, in the Chinese, and they must have had in the original Sanskrit. Because of course we have to remember this. Most of these are not sure if it's here, but most of what the verse we get in the sutras is already a translation. Chinese figured out how to do it, so we ought to be able to do that too.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Ron. To bring Shifu's verses forward is handing everybody a pearl and pointing to the storehouse of pearls that one came from. There's so much of Shifu's work that he presented to us seemingly effortlessly, and in the middle of the day it was just one more thing that Shifu did. We assumed everybody did that if you were a Chan master. In fact, these are precious and most valuable and deserve our attention and effort. So that's the conclusion of our evening program of presentation on Buddhist Text Translation Society's work ahead. And is our screen still? You turned it off. What I would like people to do, should you be moved and find a way to contribute, as Ron mentioned, your talents in advertising, your talents in law, your talents in design. If you have 2 legs, like Gofu gave us an image this afternoon, please consider making this, instead of second or third priority, make this your first priority. The need is there. As Madalena mentioned earlier, there is a tremendous hunger for spiritual nourishment in the world. And the more confused and confusing the world becomes with climate change and with increasing gaps between the rich and the poor and the threat of hunger lying ahead as most of our crops this year were burned away, as the world becomes such a complex place, it's important to give people a sense of courage, give them a sense of hope, give them a sense of direction. And the Buddha Dharma does all that. And Shifu is just hoping that we will, I believe. I can't put words in his mouth, but we've heard him say over and over again that we need to make this our own responsibility. His intention, I believe, was to use the Buddha Dharma to save the world. Not only does he want us to become Buddhas, but he wants us to become wholesome people whose eyes, whose hearts match the measure of the Dharma realm for the benefit of all living beings. And one very concrete, positive, direct way we can do that is to give people access to the teachings that he left behind. And so there's no time like the present. Don't wait. If you are looking for something to do, busy people are the ones who get things done, you know. So the excuse, well, I'm too busy. Well, who's not busy? So please do consider getting involved in this work. bttsvolunteers@gmail.com is the place to go. Buddhist Text Translation Society, BTTS volunteers, plural, volunteers with an S, is that right? bttsvolunteers@gmail.com. Send in your thoughts, your responses, your notions of what you might contribute. Those emails will be read. We'll get back to you. We'll open a door the way the door was opened for us to come and take part, each according to his strength and his wish, and according to her strength and her wish. All right? So that's the end of the program this evening. Somebody said we wanted to leave time for questions. Is there anybody who has a burning thing they need to say right now in any language, Vietnamese, Chinese, English, all okay? Yes, Chinwei.
People ask about where they could find the footage for this event, and it's at
drba.org/live, and this afternoon's program is up there now. Yeah, and what we're saying now is being webcast live and will be available for archiving later, so you can go at any time.
There's also a form on that website. You can see that if you fill out that form, we can also get back to you.
If you will fill out the form that's available on that website, we will get back to you. That's a promise. And use whatever language you would like to use to fill in that form. Anybody? All right. So we need to transfer the merit, and we'll do it in English the way we do on Sunday nights, and look forward to sitting here again in 10, 20, 30 years with more glowing reports of how this Shifu's Bao is coming alive, bringing the Buddha's words to life. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. That concludes our program. Good evening, everybody. Good night.